You are now listening to the Grio's Black Podcast Network, Black Culture Amplified.
Welcome back to Writing Black. I am your host, Maisha Kai, lifestyle editor here at the Grio, and I am here this week with somebody who I am so excited to talk to. You know how you have like those friends that you make, you know, you like maybe meet them once and you make them on social and then it's like, oh, you're like my social like bestie. This is one of those people like for me who I'm always looking forward to what she tweets or what she has to say. And apparently I'm not the only one. So Shanita Hubbard is here with us today. She is, you might know her from any number of articles and op-eds, etc. But she also has a new book coming out called Ride or Die, a feminist manifesto for the well-being of Black women. And as a Black woman, I can say, yeah, this is recommended reading. I'm gonna say at the top of the show. I never say that. But Shanita, welcome to Writing Black.
Thank you so much. Can I just say I'm very excited to be here, and just like a quick joke, when I had a meeting with my publicity director, she told me, of course I know about your show. So she didn't know that I already knew you. Like I'm already like a fan of yours, the homie in my head. Just straight up love fest, right? So then my publicist was like, oh, we pitched her. She put you on the maybe list. We're waiting to hear back. I was like, what?
There was no maybe. And you know what probably happened is I was like, you know, we launched this podcast a little later than we thought. You know, I joined the Grio at the top of this year, 2022, in January, and we thought we would be launching in the spring, and then it got pushed back to late summer. So that is what had happened. But you were never maybe to me, honey.
I was laughing. I was like, that's what's in my head.
Right, you were like, I will email her. Listen, I will DM you personally to be like, ma'am. Yeah, no, listen, I am so excited to have you on to have a real chat, which we have never done, which is great. But also because this book, so Ride or Die. First of all, I know many people will be engaged by the title alone, so kudos on that. But I'm going to be honest with you, I was triggered. I was triggered. I was like, yo, you don't know my life. Like, you don't know how I've been living. You know, you like shouting out people on the south side of Chicago who maybe I do or do not know. And I was like, you don't know my life. You know, listen, you've written a lot of things and you are also an academic. Why was this a topic that you wanted to delve into?
That is an amazing question. And because I know that for us as Black women, right, we are often perceived as the mules of the world, right? There's this expectation that we come in and save the world, whether we are saving America from itself, whether we are saving, you know, that homegirl or that homeboy for the 50th time. There's just an expectation that we are saviors, but it's actually deeper than that. Like we look at for a lot of us, I want to speak like, you know, like we're a monolith, but a lot of us look at ourselves like that is our role.
Yeah.
That is what we're supposed to do, right? That is what, in fact, a lot of us feel like we're not even supposed to, aren't even worthy of receiving love unless we operate like that first. So I really wanted to dispel that myth and that lie because it's not healthy for us.
The Ride or Die chick is synonymous with some of our foremothers who love our families deeply, but never learned the delicate balance of loving others while protecting their own emotional needs. They taught us how to keep our family close, how to preserve family traditions, and how to raise brilliant Black girls who will grow to be amazing Black women.
Yeah, listen, receiving love or receiving support, you know, because often it's like there can be love, but there's not support in the same way that we give it. And I definitely, you know, I love that you made some like, first of all, I love that you just said about saving America from itself, because
listen,
I mean, and just the irony of that whole, you know, thing is, you know, we live with that every day. That
every day.
Yeah. And especially now, you know, midterms, all this kind of stuff that's going on. But I was really struck. So when I say I was triggered, it wasn't just actually by the way that you juxtapose what you call a ride or die girl or a woman, or chick, as Locke said. And you and I are of the same era, so I was like, yeah. But it's also The professional thing that you point out, I thought was really striking in terms of, because I know I have been guilty of this, and I know I have never necessarily won by being the ride or die chick at work, and I think that's tricky for Black women in particular. Like, you know, this thing where we feel the need to prove ourselves and to prove that we can do all the work and we do all the things, and like that superwoman complex goes into like overdrive, right? But also I think our burnout is seriously under acknowledged. So like, you know, that part to me, I just, and you take that on really early, so I was like, ooh, thank you.
I thank you so much for reading that and for noting that, because a lot of times when people hear ride or die, or you hear that Black women are, you know, considered to be the muse of the world, right there, we don't tend to think of it in other aspects of our life. We think about it in relationship wise, right? We, of course, and like you and I were like joking, but not joking, we thinking about it in terms of like social justice and activism, but also how we operate at our job. Wherever you go, there you are, right? If you're that ride or die to be everybody's end or be all, that doesn't stop when you're at work. And the dangerous implications are there as well.
Yeah, listen, I have a couple of friends who always tell me I'm too good at being what I'm too good at. So I'm just going to leave that right there. But you also do something, and you do it in the first chapter. I'm going to applaud you for your bravery in doing so. You frame this in the context of the Black church. And, you know, what's interesting to me actually about your book, so, you know, we started this podcast to talk about Black writers and Black words and how we use language. But also, you know, when you can't really talk about Black writers or the way that we approach language without talking about Christianity and the impact it has on Black people, African Americans in particular, as a whole, right? And I thought it was a brave move. Just, I don't know how else to say that. I thought it was brave. But I also thought it was necessary. Why was it necessary to you?
Because like you said, like there's no separation, whether we realize it or not, there's no separation between church and hood.
Oof.
Right? So
you say that line in the book, and I was like, I had the exact same reaction when you said it. I was like, ooh.
Even if you've never stepped foot in a church, the person that raised you has, like the Black women in your life have, and probably the women in their lives has, right? So there is a pattern that's replicated that happens inside the church that we don't necessarily speak of as candidly, and that we see it manifest, but it's certainly alive and well there. And to your point, like we can talk about this openly, right? It's easy to talk about those ride or dies that did a bid with her man, those ride or dies that work 75 days a week and don't take a day off. It's easy to talk about those, but we don't really talk about Sister Big Hat in the church, right? And how she performs in numerous labor, some in the name of God, some because there's this cultural implication of that's what's expected from her, and how that sometimes gets exploited. And again, wherever you go, there you are, right? So it's happening at work, communities, relationship, and in the church.
She's in our church, passing out Bible verses to heal us. She's up in our relationships. She's the model of how we mother. We replicate her in our careers, pouring all that we've learned from her into boardrooms and spaces that don't even know who she is or why she is.
Yeah, you know, and I am one of those people. I have not been a regular at church since probably I was, you know, a pre-adolescent, and still I was like, yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I don't know that we realize how that dichotomy like kind of spills over. Like, I love that whole idea of like there's no separation between church and hood, especially given where we are now politically in the world. Because I think that even the very, 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 very rare chance that the rest of the world gets over it, I think that's something we'll still be living with and grappling with, is the impact of what it means to be a Black Christian on the Black community. You know, like the ride or die chick, whatever, it's been so exalted in, you know, pop cultural vernacular. And you really both, I think you did something really nuanced here, which is that you still exalt her while also kind of deconstructing what that means, really. Is there a way that you're hoping that we'll reframe what it means to be a ride or die?
Absolutely. I want us to, I actually want us to reject the notion of a ride or die, right? So at its core, right, this ride or die is this woman that's giving tremendously, given every ounce of herself with no expectation of reciprocity, right? And you can, it's easy for me to exalt her because she was me, right? She lives in my family. You know, she helped raise me. I went to church. I shouted.
Me and you, your mama and your cousin too. I promise you.
I see her, right? Yes. And love without seeing someone's flaws is not love at all. It's just like infatuation, right? So I see her, I see us, like, you know what I mean? She's us, but I want us to continue to love each other, show up for each other, but with a caveat. Have that expectation of reciprocity. Protect yourself. Know that it isn't required for you to receive love. Like, so yes, I want to reframe that, and I want us to like uproot that whole notion of, you know, we have to operate like that if we want to receive something healthy. And I also want us to see that that's not healthy.
I wanted to be seen as a ride or die chick in the most romantic way. I wanted to be the Bonnie to a Clyde, a beautiful woman who was happily in an us against the world relationship.
So yes, I want us to reframe it and also deconstruct it and pick it apart and be honest with ourselves, right? I thank you, and I am so thankful and grateful that A, you read it, and that B, you were honest with it, right? Because it's easy to kind of look at this like a they, right? But you were honest with yourself and engaging with the text. So I'm so thankful.
We'll be back in a minute with more Writing Black.
The Griot Black Podcast Network is here, and it's everything you've been waiting for. News, talk, entertainment, sports, and today's issues, all from the Black perspective. Ready for real talk and Black culture amplified? Be inspired. Listen to new and established voices now on the Griot Black Podcast Network. Listen today on the Griot mobile app and tune in everywhere great podcasts are heard.
Welcome back to Writing Black. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know that there's any, woman identifying Black person that I know who will not identify with this on some level. Like, I really feel like, and I love that you broke this down further to say that this was not about, like, this is not a class issue, right? So you said earlier that, that oft repeated phrase that we say that Black people are not a monolith. It is true. But that said, ride or dies aren't either. And this idea that we should be, or whatever that, entails, it spans so much further than, hood chicks, for instance, or whatever. Like, I'm self-admittedly bougie as hell, and I'm like, yeah, this is me. I do that. So I don't like, it's not, this is definitely to me more of, this is an intersectional, like, Black woman thing that we do, where we're expected to be the pillars, not just our community, but everything else. Right. And I, I asked that last question. It was a bit of a trick question because I admittedly, I did read the book. So I know that part of you is saying we need to reject this thing. We need to be anti ride or die. And I will admit, one of my favorite phrases of the last few years was like, well, where we riding to? Like, why we got to die?
Girl, you ain't riding me till I die. Like, that's been my, you ain't riding me till I die.
But why though? I'm sorry, I'm not Queen and you're not Slim, and no. Like, I don't want to do it.
Listen.
But I love you. I love you. Would you say that? Okay, so would you? Let's talk etymology for a second. Would you say a ride or die is the same as a pick me?
Oh, that girl, they cousins. Like, you know what I mean? Like, yes, like that. Yes.
I mean, I had to ask because we live in a social media culture now. I mean, we didn't necessarily grow up in one, but that's where we live now. And when I look at like the pick-me's, I'm like, oh, you guys are really ride or die. Like, you will literally go down.
They'll do the absolute
right. Like, this is the hill you're gonna die on. You will go down the blaze of glory.
those pick-me's are probably like the literal form that Kiss described in the song when he's talking about, make you use your credit card twice in the mall, you trifle.
The fall, make her use a credit card twice in the store. Might make you do it tomorrow, you trifling.
They be like, I got you because I want to build with you, King. So, yes.
Well, I love that you brought that up. So the other thing I wanted to ask you about, again, since this is a podcast about writing, is that you, in a very interesting way, have also written a book about other writers, right? Like this whole premise is very much based on a phrase that was, coined by lyricists. I love the fact that you're like, this isn't even like, if we're really talking about like the lexicon of songwriting, this isn't even like a good song. Like it's just like,
no, for real. Like I'm from Yonkers. Like I am like hip hop to my core. I'm from Yonkers. I love the line. That's not even y'all best of y'all best.
right.
I need a ride or die chick.
I rock the icy chain with the earring.
Yeah, what's up, man? What's going on? Know you know Kiss. With the hot flow and the cold wrist.
No, real talk. And we're going to double back to that. I hope you are enjoying this conversation as much as I am. We'll be back in a minute with more Writing Black.
Introducing Dear Culture with Panama Jackson on the Griot Black Podcast Network. Bring your friends for the shenanigans and stay for the edutainment as Panama debates culture wars, Janet Jackson versus Michael, Black fashions, Black mendations, and everything Black. Listen today on the Griot mobile app for all the Black culture conversations you don't want to miss. Also available wherever great podcasts are heard.
Welcome back to Writing Black. But like, yeah, this whole idea of like, like people taking a phrase and running with it, like, like how did this one man's philosophy become like, I shouldn't say one man. I know there are multiple people on the Locks, but.
No, honestly, that's a great question. The reason why that song, because we laughing and joking, like, out of all of the Lock songs, like the reason why that phrase like rings so loud and so true, and we still use it into this day. I mean, it wasn't like created by the Locks, right? But they helped to kind of popularize it and like coin it. Is because they gave us a label for a definition, for a behavior, for a trait that we have known for generations and generations. So even if the term itself, ride or die, is new, the description, the meaning, you know what I mean? The type of relationship dynamic, that isn't new. So that's lived on before us, it probably will continue to live on, after us. So that's what it is. It's not that because they just tapped into something that was pre-existing and they just boxed it up and gave this nice little label.
Well, I mean, yeah, as my producer says, it's like, they made it like a badge of honor to be that. And, when I talk about how you really made this book about writers and referencing other writers, you start this book out talking about the Combahee River Collective. I don't know where I got Richard from. Anyway, but I think to myself, like, damn, like, all this work that so many amazing people are doing to, magnify that work that was done 40 years ago or 50 years ago, and bring it. It's like, do you ever feel like, do you feel like you're screaming into the void with this? I mean, you're also an educator. You're doing so many things. What is this? What do you hope people will grab from this?
That's another. You're good at this.
I'm not bad, and I'm also listen. I'm also deeply interested in what my peers have to say. Like, I think like this is how we feed each other. So it's like, that's why we started the podcast, and that's why I asked the questions.
Yeah. So, but no, I don't believe that screaming into the void, because I feel like there is something different happening, right? I feel like women are saying, like, how you're starting to see like hashtag soft life. I feel like there's a whole generation of women that are pulling away from that are asking the questions like, wait, where are we riding to? Or why can't, so why? So I feel like there's a whole movement of women asking these type of questions. And what do I want people to get from this? I want it to hopefully for people to engage with it the way you did. I want it to be a mirror. I want for people to see themselves in it, right? And holding up a mirror. And then sometimes we do this thing, right? When we're looking in the mirror, when we don't like the reflection, we tend to take a shot at the person holding it, right?
Yes.
I want people to not do that. I want people to seriously engage with what they're seeing and what they're sitting in and find a way to break that pattern in their own lives, because that's where it starts. And then in their family's life and their younger daughter's life, if they have one, right? So yes, to answer the first part of that question, nope. I'm like, I have so much faith in these younger Black girls who are like, I wish I knew what you knew at 20, because I'm just hearing it and I'm seeing it. And I just want us, our generation and a little bit older, to engage in it more critically and honestly.
We will be back in a minute with more Writing Black.
The Griot Black Podcast Network is here, and it's everything you've been waiting for. News, talk, entertainment, sports, and today's issues, all from the Black perspective. Ready for real talk and Black culture amplified? Be inspired. Listen to new and established voices now on the Griot Black Podcast Network. Listen today on the Griot mobile app and tune in everywhere great podcasts are heard.
Welcome back to Writing Black. But I guess the reason I asked that too is because, like, part of me is like, and listen, there's so many things I want to discuss with you. I think even for those of us who maybe did know it or had an inkling of it, like I was in college studying, Bell Hooks and Patricia Williams, and all these voices and really rooted in my Black feminism at my very feminist, college that I went to, and still, the cultural pressure, I think, to show up a certain way. Heck, I hesitate to say this, but I'm also like, when I look at the 53%, I'm like, hey,
Listen.
that gender card plays really strong sometimes, I'm also interested because you have worn so many titles. This is, to my understanding, your first book, which is like wild to me. That's wild to me. Because, like, to me, you've been such a prominent voice for such a long time. I can't believe nobody's tapped you to do this before now. But you are a professor. You're a journalist. You are an acclaimed writer and columnist. I know for a fact, as a writer myself, as a columnist myself, that the backlash can be very strong. And you have now chosen to not just, like, these don't just live in a column that maybe you'll go be archived by, the New York Times or somebody. Like, it's now in a book. How do you brace yourself, I guess is the better question, against the inevitable backlash against whatever somebody perceives to be Black feminism, because that's become a dirty phrase. Like, how do you buffer yourself?
Can we just be honest here? Whenever you are, it's been hard to write, right? At every stage, I had to challenge myself to tell the truth. I had to challenge myself to be honest. And when I found myself hesitant, there were chapters that were harder to write than some, right? So there was a chapter, The Corner, right? So I'm talking about like what it's like, not critiquing Common Song in The Corner, but in Common Song in The Corner, he's talking about a very unique perspective. He's talking about Black men across America, right? Just what their experience is like in the hood and in the corner, and what this means to him and what this means to them.
Memories on corners with the foes and the moles. Walk to the store for the rolls, talking straightforward, y'all. Got Uncle Zach smoking, some put blow up their nose to cope with the lows. The wind is cold and it blows.
That means something very different for those of us who grew up a little bit more developed than the rest. And you walking past these corners as a 12-year-old child, and these grown men are hollering at you, grabbing your butt and all of this other stuff, right? So these things mean something different. So I remember like writing that chapter and going deeper, and it's very hard to share these stories because I'm naturally completely really protective of my brothers.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there like, I don't want people to feel like I'm telling my truth, still being protective of a Black man while I'm sitting there and it's just me and my laptop in there. Like, I don't want people to feel like I am saying Black men are sexual predators. I'm not saying that. I am saying amongst us, some of us are sexual predators. Some of them are sexual predators.
In terms of outward appearances, Mika and I were polar opposites. Our bodies may have been different, but when we sat in our middle school lunchroom and exchanged stories about the men on the corner, our accounts were almost identical. Girl, you know Terry was outside trying to get with me again? I would divulge to my friend, hoping my nonchalant tone was believable. Ew, isn't he like 20 or something? That's gross.
Some of us are, and if that's your community, if your community is only Black, like, then those are the people you know.
So what I'm like, it's hard to say among those of our experiences, right? So I had to really weigh with that. Like, what's more important to me? I can't coddle invisible people's feelings when I'm trying to speak the truth for Black girls and Black women who don't have this platform that I do. Mm-hmm. So I know that some people that may not sit well with some people, but it's more important to me that those of us who shared some of these experiences, who are still trying to reconcile, who's still trying to connect the dots between some of the things they were taught as children or experiencing some of the things that they're doing in their own relationships, right? I feel a responsibility and a great sense of protection for them, right? To them. So I can't coddle invisible, you know what I mean? So I understand that people may not agree with the method, and I get that. But if I only wrote about things that I feel like is going to get me yes girls, retweets, and snaps, I wouldn't even be Shanita Renee Hubbard. Like, I wouldn't even be a writer. Because I've never, like, nothing in my writing has been like the easy breezy cute
I love that.
stuff.
Yeah, stay true to self. I mean, listen, I'm going to, just as an aside, Common and I grew up in the same neighborhood in the same city, and I know that we had very different experiences being on the corner. And listen, I used to have men follow me home from school and, say stuff to me in the street. And I'm like, that's just not your experience, and that's okay. That's okay. Mm-hmm. Yes. But like, to your point, let's not negate that is a reality for a lot of us. And that is also, I think, for a lot of us, unfortunately, our first sexual education beyond the mechanics of how sex works in terms of like how sexual desire works. And I don't think that we, just as you proved in this book, I think you made a really good case, is we don't discuss enough how that frames our outlook for the rest of our lives, not just in how we show up in a public way for our family, our friends, our careers, but also in a very intimate ways, that we make ourselves subjective. I'm also interested though, I was just talking about my environment that I grew up in, but you grew up in an environment that I'm actually ironically familiar with. Like, maybe it's not ironic. So you grew up in Yonkers, and I went to a college, a Yonkers adjacent college. I went to Sarah Lawrence. So
It's like right there.
It technically is Yonkers. Don't let them fool you. It's Yonkers, and I lived in Yonkers for 2 years. So I have minimal knowledge, but I do know that like Yonkers is unsung, as you pointed out early on, unsung in terms of hip hop culture. Like, it's like, people always want to talk about the Bronx. It's like, well, the Yonkers is Bronx adjacent, and a lot of that stuff actually happened there. And a lot of that is a discussion you're having in this book. And, as we talk about language and ideas and stuff like that, like, how did that two-part question, how did that inform you as a young burgeoning mind, and also give you the confidence to write?
Well, to your point, what a lot of people don't realize is that when you grow up in a hood, and we're talking about specifically Yonkers, right? But this is probably true of a lot of hoods in America. A lot of people, you are surrounded by writers. We just don't call them that. We call them rappers, right? Everybody got bars. Everybody's spitting on the corner. There's always a superstar in everybody's hood who are using their words to paint many vignettes of their world. So it just becomes normalized to see people using their words to tell stories. And it become normalized. So it doesn't feel like that big of a leap when you start to do this yourself, but just in a different form. I remember like when my favorite verses, I'm biased, was of course the one with the Locks and Dipset. And I feel like there was a whole generation that just fell in love with Kiss when he did his freestyle to the Who Shot Ya beat. And it was like, damn, he got bars or whatever. But I'm just like, yo, that's Kiss. There's so many. He's been dope. He's been that dude.
All praises, all burners, all raises, hand down. The game is all jaders. Anything drop, I cop in all flavors. He's a y'all neighbors.
But he's not the only one. There's a whole bunch of Kiss, folks in Yonkers who got bars. There's a whole bunch of lyricists in every hood, right? So when you see this, we're not calling them writers. We're calling them rappers. We're not calling them people that are telling the stories. We're not calling them journalists. We're not calling them future novelists, right? But this is what they are. So I just grew up not realizing it then, but just completely surrounded by people that knew the power of words.
We will be right back in a minute with more Writing Black.
Introducing Dear Culture with Panama Jackson on the Griot Black Podcast Network. Bring your friends for the shenanigans and stay for the edutainment as Panama debates culture wars, Janet Jackson versus Michael, Black fashions, Black mendations, and everything Black. Listen today on the Griot mobile app for all the Black culture conversations you don't want to miss. Also available wherever great podcasts are heard.
Welcome back to Writing Black. Power of words. Like, now, see, that is a thing that I don't think we get enough credit for all the time. And I think that, like, Black people, like, we use language in ways, I love us. We're so creative. We're so creative. But, you know, I guess building upon that, you know, in your trajectory in which you took that intrinsic knowledge and then have brought it into academic spaces, into so-called mainstream spaces, what is when you're approaching those spaces, I mean, you know, we talk about, you know, obviously we all know about code switching, stuff like that. I personally have not known you to be a person who code switches, but how do you bring yourself to those environments?
I can't imagine code switching. That's just too much labor. That's just too much work, right? Girl, it takes so much work to just exist as a Black woman in America. Add on that, I then have to code switch to make these people in front of me feel comfortable. It's too much. Like, I went from Yonkers to an HBCU, you know what I mean? And then, like, I went to, like, this white school for my university. But by the time I was older and got to those years, I was already, you know, just no. So how do I show up at those environments? I show up as my authentic self. Like, I can't even imagine doing a work to try to be two different people. I can't even imagine trying to, you know, I can't. I remember, like, my editor, she was editing one particular chapter and she was like, I don't know, you sound a bit academic here and then you kind of sound a little bit, I can't remember the word that she was using. I guess, let's just say a little bit hood here. I was like, all of that wasn't the language she used. I can't remember what she said, but it wasn't like, if you've read the book, it's not super like academic.
No, it's very relatable, but it is also very rooted in this, at least something I recognize from my own studies. It is rooted in a very like socio-psychological perspective in terms of like, let's dig deeper.
So, but that's Shanita. Like, that's who I am. Like, when I'm talking to my homegirls, when I'm talking to my friends, we can go from talking about, you know, whatever. We can talk about, you know, have you seen such and such? Yeah, you know, he locked up again, right? Like, what, girl? No, again? And then we can go from, damn, that's crazy, asking about his mom, and then somehow talking about mass incarceration and impact on our community and who's left out of that conversation, and then double back again to talk about, well, damn, when he coming home, right? So that's who I am. That's who the people in my circle are. So that's natural for me. So I just show up being exactly who I am.
So how do you hope that showing up that way builds on this lexicon, this canon, if you will, of Black feminist thought that we are, you know, I hope still building? You know, for me, like, I was in college in the 90s, and that was like, you know, such a huge period of awakening for me. And I see it happening again. Like, how do you hope to contribute to that canon?
I hope, my dream, right, would be, I remember when I first read Dr. Joan Morgan, like, I read her before she became my friend. Like, when I first time I met her, I was like fangirling. But like, when I remember first reading her book, and that was the first time, and there's no shade to anyone else's work, not to Belle, not to anyone's work, but that was my first time feeling like, I felt seen, as the kids say. I got it, right? She spoke to me in a way that no other feminist has ever spoken to me. And she caused me to think deeper about my own life. And in doing so, pushed me to explore the world differently. And then I started creating my own, you know, my own lane, I don't want to say my own lane, like, she literally built this whole hip hop feminism Black thing, right? But I started to explore it in my own way and develop my own understanding and hopefully adding to the lexicon of thinkers, right? Just adding to it. So I'm hoping that there is going to be some Black woman, some Black girl that reads this, and I speak to them in a way that no one else has, you know, before me. And then I will spark something in them so that they can create their own world. It doesn't even have to be a book, right? So that they can create their own world, their own mark, and whatever that looks like for them.
Listen, I'm not a girl. I ain't been a girl in a minute, but it spoke to me. Like, this spoke to me. I had to pause several times. I was like, yo, you don't know my life. But yeah, it was very real. It was very tangible. It was very triggering in both good and bad ways. Like, obviously, the idea of being seen is never, it shouldn't be a bad one. I think some of us don't want to be seen. We will be back in a minute with more Writing Black.
The Griot Black Podcast Network is here, and it's everything you've been waiting for. News, talk, entertainment, sports, and today's issues, all from the Black perspective. Ready for real talk and Black culture amplified? Be inspired. Listen to new and established voices now on the Griot Black Podcast Network. Listen today on the Griot mobile app and tune in everywhere great podcasts are heard.
All right, let's get back into it. Welcome back to Writing Black. But, when you talk about being part of this lexicon, when you are delving in, diving deep, looking for that empathy, those reinforcements, who do you read? Who do you go to? Who's in your personal canon of people that you read or even that you listen to? Anybody who works with words.
Okay, gosh, there's so many. Lately, we probably have like the same phase, right? But lately, Candace Benbow, of course, Candace, of course, Joan, forever Kierna Mayo. I actually was just listening. I just finished, I usually read books, but I've been busy. So I've been listening to Dee Watkins' book, Black Boy Joy. So I was like, oh my gosh. And so there's so many, oh my gosh, Kiese, my friend, it's when your homeboys, I'm at a place where my friends are like in my top 5. That's so dope. Like David Dennis Jr. I'm like, come on. Like, oh my gosh, there's just so many people. And I'm like, these are like my real life friends.
Yeah. Well, why do you think I started this podcast? So I could just chat with all of you. It's like, my people are dope. No, absolutely. I mean, listen, I think that's exactly what we should be doing, exactly what you're doing, hopefully what I'm doing. Again, the subtitle of your book is A Feminist Manifesto for the Well-Being of Black Women. And even if we just zero in on the second, people who are scared by Feminist Manifesto, just focus in on the well-being of Black women and want that. Because it is important. And this idea of riding or dying, it's like it only works if it's mutual, right?
Then it wouldn't be a ride or die, right? If it's mutual, then what you are in a healthy relationship, right? Because I see a lot of, you know what I mean? Because that's the thing. It's about if you and whoever your significant other is, y'all both giving 100 and y'all giving each other, that doesn't make you a ride or die because you expect and require reciprocity and you're getting it. And you know that, and you're getting it and you're receiving it. So that wouldn't be a ride or die. That's a mutually beneficial, healthy relationship where it's flowing back and forth.
Just asking us to recognize that. Well, I hope everybody gets into this. This is, it's exciting to me. It's exciting to me because you're my friend, but also it's exciting to me from the standpoint, I think these are conversations that no matter how many of our amazing Black female minds explore this topic, I think it's always relevant, and I think it's always unique, and I think it's always affirming and empathetic. So I appreciate you writing this, Shinida, and I also appreciate you coming on Writing Black. This is so exciting to me.
Thank you. This was really, really fun. You might have spoiled me. This is like my book launch season, so I haven't done many interviews, but this is like, if this is the bars, and I'm
Listen,
good.
I just wanted to have a conversation with my homegirl about some things. So that's what we do here. And I really appreciate it. I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you writing this book. I think it does add to our lexicon. I think, we had our version of books that we were reading in the late 90s, early aughts. And I love that there's a whole new generation who is getting to benefit from what we learned then, right? I haven't written that book, but you have. Part of what makes Black writing so powerful is the empathy. And again, I got that from the very first page of this. So I appreciate you so much. Listen, I would love to know also, though, what you're doing next. Are you working on anything new? Is there anything else that we should expect?
Did my agent send you here? Right now, I'm just breathing.
Listen, this is a huge undertaking. This is a major undertaking. I just, I have to ask because I'm me.
You will be one of the first people to know.
Back. So, there you go.
Oh, I love it.
Well, Shanita, thank you so much. Shanita Hubbard, Ride or Die. Get this lovely book.
Thank you.
We will be back in a minute with more Writing Black.
Introducing Dear Culture with Panama Jackson on the Griot Black Podcast Network. Bring your friends for the shenanigans and stay for the edutainment as Panama debates culture wars, Janet Jackson versus Michael, Black fashions, Black mendations, and everything Black. Listen today on the Griot mobile app for all the Black culture conversations you don't want to miss. Also available wherever great podcasts are heard.
All right, let's get back into it. Welcome back to Writing Black. So this is my favorite part of all the episodes. Don't get me wrong, I love these conversations, but I also love encouraging our listeners to dig into more amazing thoughts and ideas and language. And, Shanita's, book, Ride or Die, a feminist manifesto for the well-being of Black women, I do think is going to be a new touchstone for a new generation, not too unlike my generation. But that said, there's other voices in this space that I think coexist beautifully and dovetail with like what she's saying and the points that she's making. One of which is Mikki Kendall, who did Hood Feminism. I want to say this came out, is this 2020? This might be 2020. This highly acclaimed book, Notes from the Women that a Movement Forgot. And when we talk about feminism, whether first or second or even to a certain extent third wave, we are often having this conversation. When we talk about the 53%, we're having this conversation that Black women have not only always been involved in feminism, but have in many ways been at the forefront of it. And feminism is not a dirty word, y'all. Don't be scared. Don't be scared. Because I promise you, when Black women win, all of us win. That's a point that's also made by one of my favorite thinkers in the universe, Brittany Cooper, in Eloquent Rage. This book fascinates me because it came out, I want to say, in 2017, 2018, somewhere around there, and became a bestseller in 2020 amid a moment of piqued Black interest. But I'm so glad that so many people got to read this book because it's so important. It's also fun, and it's so like Shanita's book. It's so personal and so relatable in so many ways. So this is Eloquent Rage, a Black feminist discovers her superpower, and I am going to drive that point home. Black feminist is not a dirty phrase. It's not a dirty word. It's not a bad thing to be. It just means that we love ourselves enough to love all the rest of you. So check them out, and we will see you on the next episode of Writing Black. Thanks so much for joining us for this week's episode of Writing Black. As always, you can find us on the Griot app or wherever you find your podcasts.
The Griot Black Podcast Network is here, and it's everything you've been waiting for. News, talk, entertainment, sports, and today's issues, all from the Black perspective. Ready for real talk and Black culture amplified? Be inspired. Listen to new and established voices now on the Griot Black Podcast Network. Listen today on the Griot mobile app and tune in everywhere great podcasts are heard.
Introducing Dear Culture with Panama Jackson on the Griot Black Podcast Network. Bring your friends for the shenanigans and stay for the edutainment as Panama debates culture wars, Janet Jackson versus Michael, Black fashions, Black mendations, and everything Black. Listen today on the Griot mobile app for all the Black culture conversations you don't want to miss. Also available wherever great podcasts are heard.